Hello. Welcome,
Hello.
everybody. Welcome to the Cape and this is actually not a typical Thursday. This is kind of the Infinite Awesome Cape and Cowl Book Club show, but it's also kind of picks of the week for this week because we are a little bit late and we didn't get to share what we're excited about. So this is going to kind of be a weird hybrid. But I'm Cody of Cape and Cowl Comics. This is our show based on the bookstore, also known as the Mutant Menace. This is my fabulous co-host Kevin, aka Kev Botzilla. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I got my tasty Coastal Classic India Pale Ale beer brought to us by our lovely customer, Alex Manzo. Shout out, Alex Manzo. Or
Ozzy.
no, Ozzy Magana. Sorry. It's the Manzo, the Magana. Alex Manzo, thank you so much for the beers. You are fueling this hour of the Cape and Cowl Book Club show.
Ozzy. Thank you, Ozzy.
Thank you, Ozzy. Sorry, Ozzy. I love you, Ozzy.
Did we mention it was a long day at the shop and we're tired? um,
Yes.
hey, Nick. Yeah, to answer your question, we are both in the shop right now. For our show, we
Yeah.
do this fun little thing where we separate to the far corners of the shop. So once again, for everyone watching, if there's echo or there's weird audio anomalies, let us know and we'll try to adjust that. But yes, we are on opposite sides of the store, probably like the polar opposite sides.
Yep, exactly. As far as we can be from each other.
Yeah, because cooties.
Yeah, yeah. Corona cooties.
Yeah.
Just kidding. We're clean. We're clean.
Yeah. We're clean. We're just very, very safe and cautious. As everybody knows, our
Yeah.
door hasn't been open for in-store browsing, so we're really big on taking every possible precaution to keep ourselves and our beautiful customers safe.
And to that point, we could start the show just by announcing that our progress on our expansion is going quite well. If you guys follow us on Instagram, you can view photos of how our lovely new slat wall is looking in the new spot. I am super excited for you guys to see this space, to hang out in the space eventually, and to act like big fucking nerds in the space too. I'm really, really pumped. So be sure to follow us on Instagram if you're not. We'll keep updating people with information as it becomes available.
Yes, indeed. And I'm sorry
Which,
that everyone can probably hear the phone right now. Wouldn't it be funny if somebody calling the shop was like outside and we're live and we can't do all the things? Sorry if that's the case. um, to listen to Aton's entire voicemail. Well, hopefully people can't hear it as well as I can. I just have a complex. So what I wanted to say though, what I wanted to add about the shop expansion and the pictures is one of these days we're going to get fancier with our broadcast where we can do picture on picture and we'll be able to talk about the picture while it's on screen so everyone can see what we're talking about. We're going to get fancier about that. I don't think I have the pictures that Aton took on this computer, but if I did, I could try to figure that out right now. But alas, we'll save it for next time and we'll start doing fun stuff like that.
And speaking of next time, we're going to we've actually all decided collectively, Aton, Cody, and I, to during these book clubs, to all of us read the same book, at least one book, so that we can get really in depth and talk about it, convince you guys it's awesome, and hopefully get you reading something new. So look forward to that. I think next week we're going to talk about The Eternals by J.R.J.R. And who's the writer? It's
Neil Gaiman himself.
Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman. It's amazing. We've started reading it. It's really good. Can't wait to talk to you guys about it. But stay tuned next week. That's what we're going to be covering, as well as some books. Like Cody said, this is almost purely a pick of the week. Oh, there it is. This is almost purely a pick of the week show. We both have giant stacks of comics in front of us, and we're just going to talk about everything. So hope you guys are ready for a wild ride.
Yeah, and we'll plug that again at the end of the show for people that missed it, so you have something to look forward to. We thought it'd be fun, too, if you guys have a copy or you want to pick one up from the shop, read along with us. That would be really, really cool, so you guys can give your input, too, while we do it. Again, this will be next week, but we're very excited to dive into the same book altogether, like, you know, like an actual book club usually does.
Yeah. So we decided we're going to cover these in groups. We're going to start with some Marvel stuff because we love Marvel stuff. Cody loves Marvel stuff, and we're going to talk about some of his favorites and some of my favorites. And let's just jump right in. What do you want to start with, Cody?
I love it. Well, I think I want to start with Sword because technically in the reading order of X-Men in the back, Sword does technically come, before Marauders in the reading order. So we might as well stick with that. Plus, this is a book I've been super looking forward to. For people that don't know, this is Al Ewing's debut in the Dawn of X. For people unfamiliar with Al Ewing, he's doing Immortal Hulk, which is his huge thing that he's doing right now. I love Al Ewing. He just recently did an Empire, too. His name was all over that, which was the big crossover event for the summer for Marvel. I love Al Ewing because he is also doing Guardians of the Galaxy. And what I love about this guy is that he really plumbs the depths of continuity. He's one of those guys at Marvel that is a continuity miner. He's constantly mining interesting things that have been left hanging, stringing together, C-list characters and making them shine, making them cool. And he does that here too. So this is kind of, oh, by the way, I should point out the artist name. His last name is Sheedy, but I always forget his first name. Oh, this book is funny because the credits page is in the back.
Oh yeah,
and not even just in the back, but like before the issue's actually even over. It's like a big movie screen kind of thing.
Oh yeah. So Valerio
Sheedy is the art. So this is for people unfamiliar with Sword. God, it's another one of those acronyms like SHIELD that I can never completely remember, but I wonder if I can do this right now without cheating. Sentient World Observation and Response Department. That's what it is. Sentient World Observation and Response
Good
Department.
fucking job, Cody. That's amazing.
Don't try to make me do SHIELD because I always forget. It's so ridiculous. You know how Marvel loves their abbreviations. But anyway, so people unfamiliar with Sword, they kind of debuted, I believe it was Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men. I mean, that was definitely the first time we met Abigail Brand as a character. And so what this is basically, Sword and SHIELD. You see what Marvel did there. This is basically SHIELD. What SHIELD does for Earth, Sword does for the galaxy. Sword is concerned with, extraterrestrial life because Earth in the Marvel 616 universe sees a lot of extraterrestrial life. So we need some kind of checks and balances. Abigail Brand is the tough as nails head of Sword, who kind of like had this whole thing, team fell from grace, but it was other people's fault. Abigail Brand is like a control freak. And she can back it up. She knows what the hell she's doing. And nothing frustrates Abigail Brand more than when other people flub on their responsibilities. She thinks it's pathetic. She doesn't have time for it. So basically, Alpha Flight kind of shit the bed recently, especially in terms of Empire. If anybody who read Empire, when it ends, Abigail Brand actually slaps Carol Danvers across the face. Like it's such a crazy moment because Abigail's just had it. There's things that was not passed, the intelligence that was not passed on to Abigail Brand. And at this point, she's just ready to take back control. So her response is to hook up with Krakoa and organize a thing with her fellow mutants and kind of take charge again. And the Sword response unit is back, essentially, in an evolved form. Essentially the mutant space program, which is interesting because the semantics of that get played with in this issue a lot about what this team really is. But the gist of this, I'll give you guys like the awesome team that we got, at least on the cover. We have Kid Cable, who, like I said, I'm really warming up to. Didn't like him at first. We have Manifold. We have Frenzy.
Why don't you zoom in a little bit on that one so you can show it off a bit, and then I can show off the B cover.
Yeah, for sure. So this, I'm obsessed with this cover here.
Oh my god.
And I think this is just by the interior artist Valerio Sheedy does the A cover, and it's beautiful. Yeah. One of the first things that struck me about this book, aside from this beautiful art, Valerio Sheedy also, it's worth mentioning, did the art on Empire. So the sweeping cosmic scenes, it's something he's very comfortable with. And you just see this splash of the Sword itself orbit around Earth and how it's all Krakoa'd out with all the organic mechanisms. And the first thing that really struck me hard about this book is the cast page. I won't spoil too much more past this, but there are some deep cuts. Like I said, Al Ewing mines continuity, and he does not disappoint right here. You get some mutants that really have not had their moment in the sun for a long time in this book. Sorry, you had that other cover you wanted to show?
Oh, sure, yeah. So there's also I believe, Dodson cover, Terry Dodson. Getting some just awesome Dodsonness. I'm loving Kid Cable with that blade. He looks awesome. And yes. You know what? I think it's kind of hilarious and worth mentioning that despite all of my history with Marvel, I never put together that it was sword and shield. I just was like, oh yeah, sword, and then they're gonna go up and talk to shield. I know today is how old I was when I realized those are both like, yeah, embarrassing, whatever.
Well, it's kind of cool too, right? Because the shield is kind of like a protection for the earth, and sword is kind of
Right.
about outreach and reaching out and expanding into the beyond and being cognizant of it. And I think it's kind of a Star Trek thing too, because they're like
Yeah.
never like never interfere with the civilization's development. They're strictly
Right.
observe and respond when needed. So
Yeah.
they're kind of intelligence gathering and protection too. But
And wasn't Sword also, they played a bit part in the Infinity series, didn't they? When the builders were coming for Earth. I mean, I know they've been in a lot of stuff, but I seem to remember like a heavier presence in that event that actually made me aware of their existence.
yeah,
Yeah, some good stuff. And like Cody was showing off that cast page, we both remarked immediately upon reading the book that as if you could improve Jonathan Hickman's design savvy, just adding those little pops of color made all the difference.
yeah.
It was a very, very pleasing to the eyeballs page.
Well, we love color coding. We love to see it.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Do we want to talk about what goes on in this? I mean, if you guys aren't sold by the art and just kind of the general info about Sword, we could go over a little bit more, I suppose. I mean, it starts with Magneto coming up to Sword to check it out. Now that the mutants are partnered up with Sword, there's some stuff they got to figure out. And from there, you get kind of like a tour of the Sword Station, and you get introduced to this cast of characters, like Cody was saying, super deep cuts. All the weird characters that you love but never get to see come back into comics once their initial stories pass. And then from there, I just read this on my lunch break today.
I mean, for
What was
instance,
your? Go ahead.
I'll just say, I mean, there's a couple people on. So the way Sword is structured is they kind of have a unit for whatever they may need, and they have like a logistics department, technology department, and the head engineer in the technology department is a mutant named WizKid. Takeshi is his real name, and this is a character introduced like way back, like in the Inferno crossover days, and he's
Wow.
a great character. He's disabled, and his power is he could just like pretty much engineer whatever. He's up there with like Forge in his skill level, but he's back, and Valerio Schiti illustrates him so lovingly. Like, I gotta show how incredible Schiti's character designs are. So this is WizKid here, and this is his awesome wheelchair, very like Xavier a la animation, the animated series from the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's just looking so good. The wardrobe, the character design is off the hook in this book. And I'll show you Abigail Brandon. Like, anybody unfamiliar with her will understand where she's at just by how she carries herself, which is also done so well by the artist. Like, that's a no-nonsense woman right there. I love it. We love a woman with a bright green pixie cut. You just can't go wrong. And also characters like Vanisher is on the teleportation team. I'm obsessed with Vanisher. He's one of those like shittier X-Men villains that, like, if anyone's read Kyle and Yost's X-Force run, Vanisher is just hilarious in that. So it's just like full of these characters that Ewing is bringing back and just really gonna have a great feeling of where he's gonna take them.
And the story's pretty boilerplate as far as like checking out a space station, introducing the characters, getting the story set up. But then when you get towards the second half of the issue and their team of teleporters is attempting something, you get some amazingly psychedelic pages that it kind of adds to the grandiose scape of like the space story that Al Ewing's setting up. He's also the writer of we only find them when they're dead, and he's doing Guardians right now, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, everything this guy does is big scale space epics, and this doesn't seem like it's going to be any different from those. I won't tell you guys what's going on, spoilers, but I will show you a couple of psychedelic pages that I was super duper pumped on. Also, do you know if Manifold is British or is he American, or do you have any idea?
Well, I think he is the same as Gateway, because I want to say Gateway was I don't remember if Gateway was his mentor or if they are like related.
Yeah,
But that was like Australian outback stuff where they were.
that makes sense because I was going to say my favorite page is when the teleporters are getting their stuff going. You've got Manifold standing there with his staff saying "deadly." I just like I read that in an accent immediately, and I was super pleased because if you know me, you know I love a good accent. Um, and then I'm gonna show you one more psychedelic page, and then that's all you get. Then you got to buy the book to read it if you want to find out what happens.
Oh yeah,
Look
that's a
at
great
that
one.
shit. So
That's a
if you
great
like
one.
trippy, but you like a solid cast of characters, I mean, I hope these characters stick around. The way that they've set up the teams feels very organic and like it makes sense. I mean, it's gonna be a great story going forward, I'm sure.
Well, and that's the thing too. This is going to really push the boundaries of where the mutants are as a whole, because Krakoa is this new beautiful place, but we've spent some time there now. We have a good feel for Krakoan politics and Krakoan relationships with the world around them. This is about so much more than that. This is about mutants really, really spreading their wings in a way we haven't seen yet by reaching into the beyond. And with somebody as ambitious as Abigail Brand behind the steering wheel, I mean, the sky is literally the limit, and I'm sure they'll break through that too. So this is going to be a really exciting book. I highly recommend it to anybody reading the X books. If you're not, you might have some trouble with who the hell a lot of these people are. But once again, I've said it before and I've said it again, we're at the store. We love to talk about this. I, in particular, will always talk to you about random weird mutants. So hit me up.
I mean, he is the mutant menace after all.
There might be a reason for that name.
Oh, it wasn't just a small child walking by you on the street just called you the mutant menace and it stuck.
No, although that does happen. I get called names a lot.
So you guys should check it out. I think you're gonna love it. Sword was really, really cool. And it was a very satisfying read, although awesome segue, not as awesome as the Marauders issue that followed this in the reading order this week.
Uh,
Best issue of the week, hands down.
yeah, this Marauders issue, we might as well move right into it, was
Let's do it.
something that all of us, or many of us reading X-Men and Marauders in particular, have very much been looking forward to. This is finally the reckoning of Sebastian Shaw's sin of murdering Kate Pryde. It's been long enough to where I feel comfortable just airing that dirty laundry on the show. But yeah, Sebastian Shaw killed Kate in cold blood and tried to kill Lockheed, the poor little dragon he put in a little net and sank it to the bottom of the sea. Horrible. Shaw, what else is new, is a horrible person. And so we got that story arc. Eventually, they couldn't resurrect Kate for the longest time because there was a lot of difficulty with her, you know, not her mutant ability itself, but her status as a mutant. She couldn't use the Krakoan gateways for a long time, and they didn't know if they could resurrect her. And sure enough, they were having a lot of difficulty doing so. When they finally were able to resurrect her, you know, of course, she's pissed. She tells Emma what happened. Emma's pissed too, and Emma's immediately like, we gotta go handle this. And Kate's just like, no, wait. And Emma's like, what? And in that panel, she just whispers something in Emma's ear, and Emma just gives that smile like, oh, Kate, positively fiendish. Like the line is something like that. And you know they just have a better plan. And she's like, I love it. And then we jumped into Ten of Swords. So we're in this huge crossover event between the X books, but we're leaving a lot of these threads dangling. And this one was at the top of my list as far as getting back to. We're finally here with this issue.
And I would say too that the weight, you know, normally if an event interrupts a storyline like that, you can find yourself kind of annoyed that you're not getting the payoff you wanted. This is one of the few times, well, not few times, this is one of the times in my adult life that postponed gratification was entirely worth it. The intensity of the issue was only compounded by the fact that we've been waiting months through this crazy, ridiculous, but super fun event. And now we finally get to see, and they don't miss a beat. From the first page, the retribution starts. I don't know. Do you want to show a page, Cody? Show a good page.
I think, yeah, I think this is worth showing. So ultimately, I'll say right now, they ultimately do indeed have a great plan for Sebastian Shaw. It transcends just getting revenge, you know, in like a murderous way. There is violence. That's not to say they take it easy on this sorry soul. They immediately arrive at his big chateau, knock on the door as he walks up to them, and Kate just reaches through the door and gives him two good smacks. And as you can see, her tattoo kills Shaw. So you can see the tattoos that say "Kill Shaw," so you know she just like 1-2'd him with each fist like straight through the door, and then
I love it.
walk in. Emma and Kate phase in, holding hands like badasses, just ready to wreak their righteous revenge, and it immediately is gratifying. We do not need to wait for the gratification. We've waited long enough, and Jerry Duggan and Stefano Caselli are giving it to us immediately in this issue. The thing we won't spoil, of course, is their wider plan for Sebastian Shaw. But rest assured, this is one of, like Kevin said, this is one of the most satisfying reads just for what happens and how long we've waited. And I'll also add, we kind of were talking about this earlier, Kevin. I wanted to add how masterful Jerry Duggan's crafting of Kate Pryde as a character has been, because really, Kate Pryde is a character for me that is completely influenced by who's writing her. I've read terrible Kate Pryde and I've read great Kate Pryde, and there's a lot of meh Kate Pryde, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Jerry Duggan is the kind of writer who made you fall in love immediately. She displays such epic moments of badassery in the early Dawn of X material. That's just insane. And you fall in love with her. She has a sassy personality again. She has her beautiful, luscious locks back now. She just looks great, acts great, has the best lines. And I think that really lent itself to how satisfying ultimately this issue feels, because Jerry Duggan built up this fabulous character in Kate, and then he ripped her away from us. He had her in one issue be murdered by Shaw, and even Lockheed has attempted murder on his head. And so he built this up, ripped her away, and that really lent itself to how rich and rewarding this read is, because she's back and better than ever in my book.
Yeah, I feel like you have to wait a whole trade paperback for a payoff like this, and you're getting it in one single issue, and it was well worth the price of admission. I think we were talking about it earlier too, and I feel like he did an amazing job crafting Sebastian Shaw. I mean, there was a moment during their encounter where Sebastian is like kind of begging for like mercy, and he explains his reasoning, well, his, excuse for killing Kitty Pryde. And
yeah,
I almost felt bad for him. Like I did. I was like, yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. I mean, they are killing mutants in the Crucible, like he did get her brought back at full power and everything's cool. But ultimately, the girls ain't having none of that shit, and it's just so fun to watch.
And that's another example of Jerry Duggan really nailing the voices of these characters, because Sebastian Shaw is incredibly manipulative, and so he does have this line as he's begging for his life that is very much a desperate reach for a silver lining, and it's perfectly done, Sebastian Shaw, because like you said, you almost felt bad for him, and that's how you know that this character is written very well to be the conniving asshole he really is.
There was this part that I laughed too, where they offer him a couple of choices, and he says, "I pick," and then he says, "Neither," and he just starts running. He starts fucking running from Kitty Pryde. Oh my god! And of course, they have to go retrieve him. And I laughed so hard at that part. I was like, "Oh, that's not going to go well."
I think we might have to show the Glob page, maybe, because the Glob page is excellent.
Please do. Please show the Glob page.
So Glob Herman has a big old following on X-Men Twitter. I love Glob Herman as a character, but there's a great part where Sebastian Shaw just tries to escape, jumps out the window, and just crashes to the ground. And Glob's like, "Oh, hey, Sebastian, what's going on?" And Kate just walks through the door to grab Sebastian and drag him back in. And she's like, "Oh, hey, Glob." And then she's like, "See ya, Glob." Just like no explanation. And Glob is just like, just books it. Like, I don't know what I just saw, but I don't think I'm supposed to. It is so funny.
So don't miss out. Copies are limited. There's only an A cover this week. I'm sure there'll be a second print, because this was a momentous issue for Marauders.
Yes.
Definitely check it out.
Yes, not to be missed.
Yeah, oh my god, just so good. All right. Marauders, done. Let's talk. I'll talk real briefly about this one, because I don't think Cody read it, but it's worth mentioning that the Strange Academy issue this week I thought was great. We've been dealing with this circumstance where the children enrolled in the Strange Academy were playing a game of portal tag or door tag, and they get stuck in this swamp along with these creepy tree wizards that are trying to suck the magic and the essence out of the students. I loved this issue because it's got a whole bunch of that sensibility that I loved from the Doctor Strange, Jason Aaron, and Chris Bacallo run.
Oh,
Got
that's
those
beautiful.
creepy otherworld creatures with the striped tongues and the
Look at
little
magic.
spot colors everywhere.
That's Ileana right there.
Yep, yep.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's great. In fact, Ileana is just wandering around talking. Actually, no, it's Zelma who's talking to the little creatures. But it ends up the kids end up in a full-on brawl with the wizard, the tree wizards or whatever the heck they're called. I should be a lot better at this, guys. I should know the names of all these things, but I read too many comics. I can't hold all the details.
I was gonna say, you guys know how many books we read? Throw us a bone.
I think on my lunch yesterday I read 10 issues, so
Yeah.
Um, but there's some cool reveals of the characters' powers that we don't know about that I won't spoil for you. Here's a really cool scene of them battling with the creepy tree wizards. If anybody knows what these characters are called, please pop it in the comments because it's going to drive me bonkers, and I will eventually look it up when we're done.
That art is
Um,
good.
it is so good, and it's Humberto Ramos who I love. Humberto Ramos. I've loved him ever since he was doing Amazing Spider-Man and his work on Crimson and all of that. But this is like peak Ramos. He's definitely come into his own in the style, and this book is a great example. And of course, the adults show up to help out. And I won't tell you guys, I won't show you guys what happens, but something major, major happens in this issue regarding the children of Strange Academy. So if you want to keep up with your kids, be sure to check out that issue.
Yeah, it's also Raul Rodriguez. He says they're called the Hollow.
That's right, the Hollow. Thank you very much, Raul. I appreciate you. You're the best. See, I knew I could count on you guys. And I guess that leaves us the last one in my pile is one that we both read, the aforementioned Al Ewing's
Yes.
Guardians of the Galaxy. This is not your typical issue. Cody knows a bit more about some of the older history in Marvel, so I'll let him kind of, or not let him. He can intro and talk a bit about Star-Lord and his actual origins that are different than what we know from the movies and the MCU that we've been given and have wholeheartedly consumed and loved. He's not the same. It's not the same characters from the movie. And I think we both appreciate the fact that Al Ewing is writing these Guardians as the Guardians, not as these Marvel characters that we've seen in the movies.
Yeah. So this is essentially this is going to be a big deal issue, I think, because this Al Ewing completely reconstructs Star-Lord in this book. He's going to be not your father Star-Lord, basically. By the end of this book, things change for him very quickly. For anyone who hasn't been reading Guardians of the Galaxy, I mean, Peter Quill actually kicks the bucket in the first issue. It's like the first issue or at second maybe. It might have been second. But in it was a battle with the Olympian gods. And Peter Quill essentially sacrificed himself on this mission that they took. And so the Guardians of the Galaxy have essentially been grieving Peter. Little did we know, he didn't exactly die. Not really. And this issue finally gives us answers to what the hell happened to Star-Lord. And as Kevin said, Star-Lord's origins are some of the wackiest in Marvel. Like, I wish I could tell you who created him, but I'm blanking. But it's a story where what we know is pretty accurate about, the kid and his mom and how he ended up being a starfaring hero. But it's like bonkers. It's like cuckoo bananas. Like, the actual origin is like this guy who's like the Lord of the Sun. Is that what he's called?
Master of the Sun?
Yeah. So the Master of the Sun is like this, literally like the embodiment of like the spirit of like the sun or solar energy, basically like all but kidnaps Peter and is just like, you're the one, I choose you. You're going to like defend the galaxy, like everything. And he's like, okay, And he gives him like a gun. It's like an element gun. And when he shoots it, it can be like water, fire, earth. It's like, and it's like not really explored much in Marvel and hasn't been for like a while. And Al Ewing, I think, like I said, he's mining continuity and he's like, yeah, but Star-Lord weird. Like, I'm going to make Star-Lord like kind of trippy again. And so this is kind of the story of how that happens. And I don't want to give too much away, but Star-Lord experiences some wacky stuff in this issue on a very foreign world, a foreign existence, and meets a couple characters that ultimately reshape his perception of life and the world around him. And this is essentially his journey of finding this new family and ultimately deciding whether he wants to stay here or go back. And he spends a long time here. And I just want to highlight the art by Juan Cabal, who is an incredible artist, and the panel arrangement is very geometrical, and it's very geometrical or just geometric. I don't know.
Geometric.
Thank you. It's very geometric, and I absolutely. And if you look, actually, these triangles, the way that the panels are arranged, these are actually symbolic of the elements themselves. And once you know that, it gets even cooler. And some of the colors that are used are very, very deliberate. And it's just so great. And so these are like extra dimensional adventures of Star-Lord outside of our plane of existence, outside of the Marvel 616. And he forms a family here with this man and a woman. There's a male and female being that he meets, and it's very bisexual energy. Like they all get together, and he's like, well, this is great. Like, this is all the family I need. I'm accepted here. I'm embraced here. And it's about, eventually, well, I'm getting too excited. I don't want to give it away, but something happens and it's a revelation. The past comes back to kick Star-Lord in the ass, and he realizes he actually can't stay here, and comes crashing back to the reality we're familiar with. And he's a completely changed person. And it's going to get really interesting seeing him reacclimate with the rest of the Guardians, and what it means now that he's essentially a totally changed person with a new conception of
like what's he gonna do with Gamora? Like what's he gonna do with this family he's established and these people he's fallen in love with when he is coming back with these memories of a polyamorous relationship he's had with a spacefaring couple? It's
right.
It's so freaking good. There's even a cool space turtle. Look at a space turtle with goggles floating around as the floating city that Peter and his new family live in. It's just like cuckoo bananas, like Cody said.
Juan Cabal's art he's among my favorites working at Marvel right now. He was highlighted actually in their new Young Guns initiative. That's not called Young Guns, it's called Stormbreakers. He was the art, like up and coming artist highlighted, but he's been working a while. He did a run on X-23, and he's done some other stuff too. This is some of his strongest work in this issue though. And everything changes about Star-Lord, like I said, so I think it's going to be important for people who are fans of Guardians, are fan of Peter Quill. Everything down to his look changes by the end of this. He has like a new costume that is so groovy, and I'm not going to show you it because I want you guys to flip that page.
Yeah.
But
and it even covers his time as like a space pirate as the Guardians of the Galaxy, which was originally kind of the idea behind that whole team, if I recall correctly. I mean, the Guardians looked completely different, had a completely different cast of characters back when they first came out. And I think it's changed a couple times, but it was cool to see him with the red bandana getting all piratey and shit in space again. We haven't had a lot of that, and Star-Lord always has his gun on him, but digging further into his element gun and why it works and how it has worked for so long is amazing. It was so cool. And and like Cody said, it ties in with those Greek gods that he was battling earlier. I don't know, man. Read this shit. It's so good. I was sold from the very first page, and I'll just give you guys a little idea of what sold me right off the bat. It starts with this splash page that all Marvel books, kind of begin with, where it's giving a description of what's come before. And you'll notice there are all these places where Master of the Sun is crossed out and replaced with the story that we know from the MCU and the more recent Guardians stuff, clearly indicating that something changed or something was overwritten, or that he's experienced stuff that he maybe doesn't remember that he needs to. So I thought this was amazing. And I was instantly, whenever you see like redacted information in the intro of a book, it's like, yes, I'm gonna get some good shit. So I check it out. It's a really cool read. This was almost as good as Marauders, not quite, but it was getting there.
Yeah, I wanted to share too. One of the funniest lines to me too is he's talking to her about the element gun and how he can literally shoot like rock sculptures and craft whatever he needs. It's like this crazy magic gun, and she's just like, that's fascinating. How does it work? And he just kind of looks at it. He's like, I don't know. It's just like it's like a huge hole in his existence to not understand this massively powerful weapon. It's wild. This is a wild book, and Al Ewing, bless Al Ewing.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, Star-Lord in this alternate world lives for 150 years. So, a lot of shit happens.
Yeah. And that is like a space-time continuum situation where that time passed for him, but did it pass for us kind of thing. It could have been mere moments here. Yeah,
we're going to find out next issue. I'm going to stop talking about it because I'm going to give everything away if I keep talking about it.
I know, it's just so much to chew on with that book, too.
Yeah. Cool. Do you have any other Marvel ones that you've read that you'd like to go over or talk about?
I think that was my Marvel actually.
Nice. Me too. Okay, cool. Um, all right, let's do a little DC stuff. There's a couple books. Our illustrious, infamous leader, Aton, is unable to join us this evening. So he asked that we talk to you guys a bit about the last stories of the DC universe, with this beautiful Tula Lote cover. This is another one of those like square bound one shot books that's coming out around the Death Metal series. And I think this is leading into the final showdown or the last issues of Death Metal. And it's just a collection of stories by different creators, writers, artists, about what all these people are doing and how they're reconciling, past issues with other characters before it all goes down. It was a love letter to longtime DC fans. It covers characters you haven't seen forever, characters that have popped up from these multiple worlds that they've been dealing with. And the art in most of these stories is incredible. I don't know if there was a single one that I didn't like. I liked them all. There were a couple I liked more than the others. So I'll just give you guys like a hit list of some of these creators that are working on it. And this alone will probably sell you. Our first story is by Josh Williamson, James Tinian, and Scott Snyder. The second one is by Jeff Lemire. Third one's by Mariko Tamaki. The fourth one is a Green Arrow and Black Canary story by Gail Simone, which I loved. Aquaman by Chris Sabella, our boy Chris Sabella. The Bat Family story by Cecil Castellucci. And finally, there was one by Mark Waid, a Superman story by Mark Waid. A lot to read, a lot of cool little snippets. It's very dialogue heavy because you got characters narrating their own stories and talking about what's going on between them and other characters. But there's a lot of like resolved stuff that has been unresolved in the DCU for a very long time that happens here. I would highly recommend checking it out. These one shots for the most part through the Death Metal series have been just a delight to read. And yeah, promised Aton I'd talk about it, which not a big deal because it was actually really good.
Yes, that was our absentees pick.
Yeah. I mean, he picked everything else too, because you know how Aton is. He picked it all already. So
yeah, it was just a solid week. Like Aton was saying too, it was a deceptively sneaky week because it wasn't like enormous, but there was a lot of quality. There's a lot of quality out this week. So
yep. And there were a couple other. Do you have any other DC stuff? I have a couple that I could cover quickly.
I do not.
Okay. Real fast. American Vampire 1976, Chapter 3 of the final arc of the American Vampire Saga by Scott Snyder and Raphael Albuquerque. We're just getting more into it. We're getting further into the final showdown between the Gray Trader, Skinner Sweet, who currently does not have his vampiric powers, but he's no fucking slouch. He didn't survive hundreds and hundreds of years. Did he survive hundreds of years? I guess it was the Pinkerton days. Maybe not hundreds and hundreds, but he survived a very long time, and he's not a dummy. He's definitely prepared for the various types of vampires that are going to come after him. I don't know if this has a whole lot for people who aren't reading the American Vampire stuff. If you want to get into it, we definitely have some of the older volumes. And we do have the previous 2 issues that's come out so far. In fact, you could totally pick up with the 1976 story and read it and then backfill, whatever you want out of the previous, 9 volumes of story. It's worth mentioning American Vampire is hands down my favorite vampire comic of all time. I'm sure I'm forgetting about some vampire comics, but I don't even care. I think American Vampire is better.
Damn.
I know. Shots fired. Sorry, other vampire comic creators that I didn't consider in that statement, but it's great. It's like a vampire story told across the history of America. So if you want more information about that, come check me out at the shop or hit us up on Instagram. I'm happy to tell you more. And then the final one finally got a little bit of insight into Sweet Tooth for those of you that read the first one and were like, what the fuck is this? Is this a retelling of the original story? Is this a continuation? The verdict is in. I think it's a continuation of the original story because obviously at the end of the original Sweet Tooth story, the hybrids took over. They were thriving on Earth. Gus, little Sweet Tooth, was getting older and had a family. His horns were growing big. And this story picked up with a young kid that looked a lot like Gus, who was kind of remembering Jeopard and a couple of the characters from that original story, and you're not sure exactly why. I'm not going to tell you why, but I am going to tell you that Sweet Tooth is not alone in this world where he's been told that he's one of the last hybrids and that they need him to do these tests to determine if humanity can survive. He finds out he's being lied to, and there's some other shit happening elsewhere. I would it's hard to describe without spoiling things, but we get to see some characters, some villains from the previous arc who look a little older, evidence towards my story continued theory. And they dig deep into the lore around the original, like in the original Sweet Tooth, the people regarded these hybrids as like children of the gods. And they get into that a little more, which is super cool because the mythology in Sweet Tooth is one of the best parts. But yeah, I don't know. If you guys want to check it out, the first one is a head trip. Even if you haven't read the original Sweet Tooth, I think that this is a great jumping on point if you don't want to read 60 issues worth of old Vertigo stuff. Though you probably will eventually want to read it because this story has incredible heart, and I'm really pumped to see how well it fits into the previous stuff. So check it out. Sweet Tooth issue 2 out this week. Issue 1, we should still have a few copies. In fact, I think we have some Jim Lee variants of number 1, and I don't think they're doing variants for any of the other issues. So if you want a cool cardstock cover of Sweet Tooth drawn by Jim Lee, we should have a few of those available on the website.
Yes, much like everything else discussed, there's going to be a link in the description of this video. Everything we're talking about can be purchased immediately on our website, so please check it out.
We also chose all the stuff that has not sold out yet either. I don't think anything we have here that we're talking about this week is stuff we are completely out of copies on. That would be silly for us to do.
Yeah, I hope not.
I mean, we wouldn't intentionally do it, but I'm pretty positive that when we're picking our books that everything should be available for you to scoop up if you want to check it out.
Yes.
It's been kind of quiet in the chat. Is anybody...
We're just kicking it.
We're just kicking it. Just enjoying the full scope of the new comic week.
Yeah, we's in the jizz.
We's in the jizz. I love that shit. All right, Cody, why don't you pick one of these non-DC, non-Marvel books that you want to talk about?
Yes, well, I have to say, I've been talking it up, and it's finally here. This is Homesick Pilots. Homesick Pilots by one of my favorite people working in comics, Dan Watters. His new collaboration with artist Casper Wingard. I think this is technically the C cover by Danny, who was his collaborator on Coffin Bound. Of course, I had to show this one, and that's the A cover there that Kevin's holding. There's also a B cover that's really cool. It looks like a punk rock show flyer. Really, really rad. I'm gonna go grab it right now. But yes, this is Danny's art. Can't get enough of Danny's art. I am obsessed. And here I'll show Kevin has the B cover there that looks like the flyer you'd see posted in a dirty urinal in a punk rock bathroom.
Hell yeah.
I wish they leaned into that and made it really crusty looking.
Yeah.
I guess it'd be it'd be fun
maybe
to
maybe the house will be crustier once we get a little more eyeballs inside,
Yeah. I wish they did a real grungy looking flyer cover though, but it'd be hard to differentiate the damages from the good copies for that, I'm sure. But yeah, Roll, it usually doesn't take me this long, huh? It took me a little bit longer to throw Dan Watters' name out there.
I just steamrolled him with talking about Marvel and DC stuff first.
Roll, did you say that before I even mentioned it? That's hilarious. There we go. That's so funny. Quinn's in the chat. Hi, Quinn. That's my friend. Quinn says they're just listening intently tonight. That's good. That's good. But we like you guys to be chatty Cathy's, though. Show it, throw all that banter at us. Picks of the week is becoming epic. How do you come up with ideas? Are you talking about? Let us know. I think you're talking about the short videos we try to do weekly.
No plan ever. we come up with plans, then we abandon them, and then we do something
Oh,
else.
I
It's
was
great.
gonna say that I was gonna say a magician never reveals their secrets, but yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Kevin's right. We just
Damn.
kind of go for it.
My
um,
bad.
it's a good way we operate here, though. We kind of just go for it. We say, well, we got to do it, so let's see what happens, and we press record, and usually what happens first happens. But thank you for loving them.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry to get to get a little bit back on track. This is Dan Waters' brand new book, his new collaboration with Caspar Wijngaard, who is the collaborative team that brought us Limbo. So in this book, I think I mentioned it for anybody that watched the last show. This has been pitched as Mighty Morphin Power Rangers meets The Shining. It's about haunted houses that are piloted as mechas by a punk rock band. This takes place in the 90s, which is super cool. The opening says it's 1994. And we're instantly treated to kind of this neon drenched art style that Caspar Wijngaard is so known for.
Yeah.
Beautiful. The color palette is instantly striking. It's one of the first things that'll hit you about a Caspar Wijngaard book for sure. And so this book is basically our introduction to our main characters, which are in a band called the Homesick Pilots, just like the title. In this book, we see that they're kind of down and out teenagers that are, they're not well off. They're kind of, whoops, I didn't mean to highlight you. I'm doing it again. They're not well off. In fact, they're a lot of like foster children. So these are very much teenagers, that society has kind of lost sight of. They're kind of all lost their way. They're all misfits. And there's this other misfit band in town called the Nuclear Bastards, and they're playing a show. And these two bands kind of like, in this issue at least, almost behave like gangs. They're kind of on each other all the time. They get into this fight, and it kind of leads our main character, Ami. She kind of, Ami is clearly our ride-along. She's our main character, and she's become really disillusioned with this lifestyle. And as kind of an outcast, she's talking about this house that's apparently haunted, where a bunch of spooky shit has happened, and people have gone in there, disappeared for long periods of time, and have come out really injured, both mentally and physically altered. And she's just like, man, wouldn't it be cool to throw a show up there? Like we should play a gig in the fucking haunted house that hurts people.
That's so 90s. That's so 90s.
Let's play a show in the killer house. So from there, that's kind of our launch pad, where she ends up wandering to this house alone. Not the best choice, but like I said, these are kind of misfits kids with not a lot of direction in their life, and they're young, they're pissed off, and they're looking for something more. She wanders to the house alone, and our other main characters in her band go to find her. And what happens in this house is insane. The house is very much haunted. It's almost sentient, and the way it behaves when it lashes out at them. But I wanted to show this great spread of both bands entering into this house. This is the kind of spread that I've become very excited about for Caspar Wijngaard. He did a similar spread in Limbo, where you kind of follow the character's journey across the pages. And this is happening simultaneously. We see our main characters up on this side climbing and scaling the house to enter it because they don't know how to get in. And then you got these guys are the rival band, and they realize that the kitchen window's open, so they come from the bottom. And it's cool because this scene happens simultaneously, and then they converge in the very center of the pages, which is such a cool, stylish way of depicting the scene. And like I said, I love Caspar's use of the page. He's always exploring how to use a page.
Oh my God, there's so many parts of this that I want to spoil and show you guys, because
it's tough,
shit in the house is so good.
It's tough not to spoil, because the end is just the last, like, literally 2 pages give you a good feel for where this is going to go. And essentially our main character becomes almost like an agent of this house. And that's kind of all I'll say, because what happens after that is truly going to lead into the Dan Waters kind of his wild concepts that he's known for. I can feel that we're going down a very interesting path that's going to subvert a lot of expectations.
Yeah, there's this little bit towards the end. It's an all black page with some white writing where they describe the house and how it's supposed to work like a magic circle. You can do all these reality defying crazy things inside of a magic circle, but it all happens within the circle. And that only holds true in this house if everything is contained in the house. However, something's been taken from this house. And that also kind of kickstarts a little piece of the adventure that this house needs to get back what was stolen from it. So you can imagine with a punk rock band piloting the house, it's going to be a wild fucking ride.
Yeah.
So excited. Look at issue 2. Look at the cover for issue 2. Woo! I think it's only going to get better from here, everybody. I did tell Cody when he was asking me what I thought about this that I felt like it lacked a little bit of the Dan Waters weirdness, but I can tell it's coming. So definitely, I think he was saying one of the more accessible titles in his repertoire. Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I will say this issue 1 in more than just being a collaboration with Caspar Wingard, I feel like it is comparable to Limbo issue 1 because it has that same feeling of accessibility. You know you're going to get a wild sci-fi injected paranormal story, but it's given to you in a way that's familiar, especially with this book because it's, you know, punk rock kids in the 90s. So it's kind of that familiar feeling of being a disillusioned young person in a world that seems not to give a shit. And the things you'll do just to shake it up and find yourself and find purpose. So it's a very accessible way to jump into this crazy concept of haunted houses being giant robots that are not even robots, but giant houses being piloted. I mean, that concept alone is just insane. And that's why I read comics right there.
100% agreed. So check out Homesick Pilots. Like Cody said, we have several copies of both covers available still. Collect them all if you want, or just pick up one and read it. It's well worth it.
I definitely bought all 3 covers because I'm that guy.
Yep. Cody is definitely that guy. What do you want to do next, Cody? Do you want to do, I've got Crossover, Giga, or 7 Secrets?
I think
Giga?
Really,
Crossover.
We are right now. We're at like the 52-minute mark. I think.
Right.
I think we could. I kind of want to do Crossover.
Let's do Crossover. I can always cover these other ones just as like a hey, check these out, honorable mention.
Yeah, I mean they're all so good. It's a tough choice, but
yeah.
Crossover I feel is just Crossover I feel is just such a good book for a variety of reasons, but I feel like Crossover in general, the way it's played out to me truly feels like a love letter to comics readers, comics fans, and comics retailers. Like there's stuff in here for everybody. If you love comics, this is a book about comics, and more than just that, but it's a book about comics' impact on the world around us. This book makes that very literal, right? It's like the comic book world is very much affecting our real world in this book. But I think that's a beautiful thing and kind of a meta commentary that Donny Cates is offering us with this book. So yeah, people that aren't familiar, this is Donny Cates' current series with Jeff Shaw. And yeah, in the first issue, we find out that there's been a crazy cataclysmic summer blockbuster comic book crossover event. But this one's different than all the others because it's literally blown out of the pages and shattered into our reality. And this book explores the ramifications of that and how that changes society. And comic book stores literally become the embodiment of a lot of societal paranoia about comic books and comic book stores and comic book culture in general. How, you know, the Wortham, the Seduction of the Innocent was that book all about how comics are corrupting the youth and how they're terrible and how, you know, we're all going to be killers and criminals for reading comic books. And that paranoia is very much like real now because all the violence of the comics is all around us, right? So that's kind of like a totally new thing that like society is dealing with. And comic book shops are literally looked down on. There's all these like religious fanatical groups coming at comic shops of being like these layers of evil, right? And for fans and readers and people in comics, this is like our life. This is our very much our reality. This is our passion. And so comic book stores are seen as for people in the, you know, whatever you want to call it, in the fandom, are kind of the last bastion of safety and family that we have in this crazy world. But I've been talking a lot, so I'll let you talk about this issue too.
You know, there's a particular aspect of this issue that really struck me more so than anything else. And it was when they start to talk with the young girl who seems to have escaped or been brought out of the dome that contains all of these superhero elements and, you know, is essentially the only barrier that's keeping full-blown superhero warfare from happening in our world. It starts to address stuff like, you know, they ask her, they're like, so you got out of the dome. How do you think we could get back in? And she's like, no, I didn't come out of the dome. I came out of the camps. And this just brings a whole fucking slew of crazy shit that has to do with how reality would handle a superhero incursion in terms of immigration and in terms of internment camps, which is like terrifying. Like these people are fucking superheroes and supervillains and characters from fantasy and fiction, and they're being locked up and chained up because the real world doesn't know what to do with them. So if that gave anyone else chills, you're not the only one. It was dealt with in a really sort of chilling way that I think is going to impact the rest of the story greatly, because they need to figure out how to, I'm assuming, help these people or get back into the dome through them. I have no idea, but I'm gonna find out because I'm gonna keep reading this shit. There was one part that we all agreed was maybe initially our very favorite part of the issue. It opens up with a newscaster whose very first line of the book says, Brian K. Vaughan, acclaimed Marvel Comics writer, has been found brutally murdered today in his palatial New York home. And then it also says, 14 comic book writers found dead, 14 comic writer to be found dead in the last 3 weeks. Chip Zdarsky, Scott Snyder, and Robert Kirkman are still missing. Yeah, and then they go through this whole bit where they're trying, like, who's Brian K. Vaughan? Oh, you know, the Marvel guy. Not the Marvel guy. And then they're like, oh, you mean the Runaways guy? Oh, yes. And wouldn't it be nice if Brian K. Vaughan could be distilled down to simply the Runaways guy? But there's no freaking way in our world.
I love that about it too. The reporter just says like, known, highly regarded Marvel writer BKV, and my first question was like, Marvel writer, like, yeah, but no, like,
no,
that's really, like, where like a lot of the beef of his work is. And like the next page, the comic book owner, one of the characters owns a comic shop, and he's sitting there watching this newscast, and he's like, why the hell did they say Marvel? Like, and it's like, yes. And that's what I mean by like a love letter to like fans and retailers, because that's the way we would talk, right? If somebody's just like superstar Marvel writer Brian K. Vaughan, we'd all kind of be like, well, yeah, but it's done a lot more else.
And it didn't really strike me until now that like the hold on a sec. It didn't really strike me until now, but that older guy that's with the main character and the little girl, like normally when you see an older character with white hair and a beard and glasses, like the voice of reason, he's like always typically like the place that the main character goes as a sounding board. In this book, that's not the case at all. This older guy who looks like he should have the wisdom, like he should know what's going on. He's, run a comic shop forever. This guy is just as freaked out and scared as these children that he's watching, and this young girl that's come from another reality, which I think just kind of echoes like comics in general. Like there's some old ass comic nerds that that would have the same sort of reaction. And I really liked how they played that character, and I didn't really realize it until just now. So
he honestly feels super grounded. He's just behaving in a very grounded, realistic way, and you kind of attach yourself to that. Even in his like shittier moments where he's kind of being an asshole, you're like, he's a little bit of a jaded, like cantankerous comic book owner kind of guy, but it's so funny because it happens. It's the reality of a lot of the industry, a lot of the biz. But he's very like he really like anchors the story for sure. I wanted to point out when you were talking about the part about the camps and how chilling is a great word for it, and how heartbreaking it is, because these are actually the people that they show and who she's talking about. They're not even supers, like, and that's the heartbreaking part. She said these are the people from my reality. So this is you and me. This is you and me in the comic book world. They're just your average Joes. These guys don't even fly around. They're just the people inhabiting the same space as the heroes and villains. And of course, our first reaction as a people is to react very aggressively to things we are scared of or don't understand or are not familiar with. So we lock them up, we experiment on them. And it's truly terrifying because it's, they're different because they're from the comic reality, but this shit happens in real life for people who inhabit our Earth, who are not from different realities. There's people being locked up and put in cages, and it says a lot about that. And it's definitely social commentary that Donny Cates is tackling here. And he's doing it really, really well. He's doing it I like the slower pace of this book as compared to some of his more, I don't know what you want to call it.
His stuff tends to be pretty frenetic and crazy from the get-go.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a fucking heavy metal writer. That's where he got his cut his teeth on some of the stuff, was writing heavy metal stories, which are crazy. So it's definitely a slower burn story of his, but if I know Donny Cates, there will be a couple moments of madness that are just going to rip everything apart.
Well, yeah, and that's what thank you.
Yeah.
Frenetic's a good word for it. I personally am liking the time he's taking here. I'm liking the slower pacing he's going with. This is kind of a I haven't read an incredible amount of Donny Cates, but this is kind of more of what I would look for in this kind of book, with the heavy commentary, the implications of the supers in our world, and using that to talk about very real issues. I mean, that's right up my alley, and I'm really excited about this book. And it's at once heartbreaking and fascinating. And I wanted to say too, a design choice I love is that the people from the comic book world, I don't know if you can tell, but it's the dot art. It's not really picking up on camera, but it's
not really.
So
but it's like the pop art style.
Yeah, and that's kind of like differentiates the little girl that they find. It differentiates her visually from everybody else in the book, which I thought it was such a cool touch in the art. And we're getting this other main character here who was like part of the fanatical, like his father's like a pastor or something. He's just very aggressively against the comic book thing. This issue has a huge development for him and why he's going to be so dang important, which I won't spoil, but he gets wrapped up in the deep politics of the behind the scenes machinations of an organization trying to get to the bottom of this superhero explosion. So he's going to become very, very important. He's going to be a key guy.
I will say the only thing that bothered me about Crossover is the fact that the only cover they did for number 2 is a match for the C cover of number 1.
Which is so weird.
Which is so freaking weird. Like, make the C cover the A cover if all your covers after that are going to follow. I like a collection of covers that look tight. So if you guys liked Crossover 1 and you're going to get Crossover 2, but you're kind of OCD about your covers like me, we still have some cover C's of number 1 with the girl character opening a flaming book as well. That's a little nitpicky nonsense thing that in no way impacts the joy you will get when reading it, but worth mentioning. I mean, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's a minor gripe, but Kevin and I both have very similar sensibilities when it comes to aesthetics and uniform presentation of things. We're both very particular about the way things look on a shelf or in a box, and that's part of why we got this job, is because we care about that kind of thing. But yeah, 100. I just respect your enjoyment of the story, and I will say the A cover for issue 1 is fantastic, though. It's a really good A cover.
I mean, they should have done an A and a B. They should have given, whatever. They'll figure it out, I'm sure.
Yeah.
The ultimate, what will break me is if issue 3 is the cover B artist from number 1.
Could you imagine?
Just give me all the A's, you assholes. Well, everyone, we love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I totally understand why there wasn't more dialogue in the chats, because we were just talking. We were getting into the meat and bones of this week's comics, and we covered a lot of ground. Thank you so much for joining us. I will say, like I said a moment ago, honorable mention, Giga number 2, fucking amazing. World building still going strong. 7 Secrets.
Oh my God, it's really good.
Oh my God, the whole organization is under siege.
If we had more time, we would talk about this, because this is fantastic. We're huge fans of 7 Secrets of the Store. This is Tom Taylor's current effort, and it is not disappointing. This book moves at breakneck speed. Like, if more books were as full as this one, it'd be insane. A lot happens in a very short amount of time.
Seriously. And then honorable mention, I feel like I would be doing you guys a disservice, because issue 2 was actually what brought me around a little more on this issue. Scarin' Hood. It's sort of a suburban urban myth meets the terror of being a parent to a small child. So if any of you are parents out there and you like dabbling in urban legends and scary, spooky stories, this is a hell of a book. We could talk more about it. Hit us up. We're out of time today, but I'm happy to talk Scarin' Hood with you if you want to know a little more.
And that's a demographic that doesn't get catered to very often, too.
No, not at all, man. Not at all. I feel like, the terror that they've built around these characters and how they're handling an urban legend that they're investigating in their own community, all the while still making sure they're there on time to pick their kids up after school when they've been stuck under the bleachers in an otherworldly realm for 24 hours. It's great. Like I wasn't super sold on the first issue, but number 2 brought me around. We have both issues if you want to check it out. It'll probably make a nice tight little trade paperback when it's done. But I feel like, if any of you are out there that are parents that are, can acknowledge that sort of crazy feeling about being a parent and worried about them, but also worried about stuff that's going on in your community, I would check it out. It's a great sort of horror, non-horror title. And that's all I got. No more, I promise.
Like we said, there's so much to read this week. But yeah, we're at our mark, so we're just going to wrap up. I wanted to plug one more time. Tune in next week. We're all going to get together and discuss Eternals by Neil Gaiman and John Romita Jr. We're going to talk about it all together, like an actual book club tends to do. So that should be really interesting. You're going to get 3 totally individual perspectives on the same story, which is something that I love to do. So tune in next week for that. And if you watch the show tonight, or if you're watching this later on YouTube, please give it a thumbs up. It helps with our metrics. Subscribe to us. We're almost at 100, so I can change the damn URL. I just want to do the simple things. So it's a huge help if you subscribe. Plus, every time we have a new video up, which doesn't hurt. Once again, thank you so much, everybody that came tonight, gave us a view, and participated in the chat. Quinn, you're cool. You're cool, Quinn. And I can't wait to hang out with you again someday.
Can we do a collective heart on the side of the screen, Cody? Is that a possibility? Get over there. Get over there, Cody.
Really hard.
You guys get the idea. We love
That was difficult. Okay.
We'll practice. We'll practice for next time.
Thank you so much, guys. Tune in next time. Ooh, nice little voice crack I got. Bye.